So for those who pay attention to my videos, you'll notice there's always a room behind me that's quite dark and normally full of junk. But that's changed. This room has now been finished. So yes, there is now Hoff wallpaper in this very echoey toilet. Do you know what there also is in this very echoey toilet? Blank walls. I don't do blank walls. Now a mirror may get put on one of these walls at some point, but I thought I want to make something to go on here. And what better to go in a room about Hoff than a Hoff Wampa. Obviously not a full-size one because there's no way that's going to fit in here. So instead I'm going to make a mounted Hoff Wampa head trophy. Okay, so I want a bit that's obviously going to be the back of the head that's going to stick to the actual mounted part. So I'm just going to use cardboard for that, and I didn't have a cardboard that was quite big enough, so I'm just going to quickly hot glue these two bits together, and that should make a fairly decent sized base for a Wampa head. Now I've got some of this stuff, which is upholstery foam. This is a quite thick upholstery foam. It's just a really nice soft squidgy one, and it's quite easy to sort of carve into shapes, and it glues well with hot glue and also glues quite well with barge cement. People use this combination of stuff to make things like handheld puppets, so I'll probably use the barge for gluing some of this together. And it's just a case of trying to figure out the basic shape of the head to start with and then building up on top of that. So what I think I'm going to do is go for the special edition Wampa over the original version, because it just kind of, I don't know, I just prefer the sort of that big rounded head to that. That looks a little bit more terrifying. I prefer to have that on my wall. So it'll just be a case of looking at the reference material and just sort of figuring it out as we go. So this is the basic head shape. As you can see, it's not hugely neat, but that doesn't matter if there's gaps because you're going to cover it with fur, so that is going to be completely hidden. Just cut away at certain areas you can see around the chin just to make it sort of a little more rounded off the top of the head, so it's a bit more angled. And behind the eyes I've just put a bit of cardboard because I'm going to use EVA foam to build up the shape of the eyes and also build up the inside of the mouth and the teeth before I start putting any fur on, because otherwise it's going to be awkward to try and get it in there underneath the fur. You don't want any obvious kind of seams, and it needs to be painted before the fur goes on. So that is going to be the next step. So put a little bit of a thin foam just in the eyes and the mouth area just to cover up some bits for now, because we're going to add some more detail and add paint to it. It looks kind of creepy now, but it should look good when it's done. So starting putting some of the detail pieces together. So this is the tongue. So this is just 1 centimeter thick EVA foam, just cut into a tongue shape. Use the heat gun to sort of get this little curve at the front. And I use this, which is just a little handheld sort of engraving device. This was cheap from my local Wilco's, and just gone over it and added loads of creases in the tongue and loads of little sort of divots to try and make it look like taste buds. Just gives it a little bit of texture, so when that's painted that should show up really, really nice. So we now got all the components of this build together. Done the foam on the inside of the mouth and the eyes. This looks like some kind of creepy version of the creature from the Black Lagoon at the moment, but it should look a lot better when it's painted, so we got to seal all this stuff first. And as it's small pieces, I'm not going to worry about plaster dip. I'm just going to use the old trusty watered down PVA, because I'm going to be doing this with acrylic as well rather than spray paints. And the finished extra EVA foam pieces. So we've got the tongue, then we got the teeth on here. So I just cut the teeth just using scissors and sanded them down a little bit by hand. So I've just tacked them onto a strip of foam here just so they're all standing up and they don't all roll off the desk. It's just going to make it easier to paint. And we got these, which are the horns. And they're 3 layers of 1cm EVA foam stuck together and then carved it out with the Stanley blade. And I was going to use a big hand sander that my dad gave me, but it didn't work quite so well. So I've just gone over it with my trusty Dremel, just using one of the sanding wheels, and also using that same sanding wheel gone in and made like little grooves in the tusk just to give it a little bit more sort of definition. Got all the foam pieces glued on now. One thing I forgot to do was I forgot to make a nose. So I'm just painting up a nose at the moment, and I'm actually going to stick that on over the top of the fur, so that doesn't need to go on yet. So we've got the tongue in, we've got the teeth, we've got the horns, and the eyes are just black, so they're just painted plain black. It still looks really weird at the moment, but the fur is going to be what makes this thing come alive. So it's going to get really, really messy here. So what I'm going to do, because I'm not really an upholsterer, I just kind of do it and hope it looks good. And because it's quite a long fur, you can hide seams quite easily. I'm just going to do a big strip round the top, round the bottom, and then work on small sections on the face just to try and make it look good. So we've got a very furry Wampa head, but it needs a bit of styling, so I've just got my comb and some hairspray. This is my mum's. Hopefully I won't use it all. So I'm going to try and style this fur a little bit, because at the moment it's a bit of a mess, so I want to trim it around the eyes and probably a little bit around the mouth, but not too much that you can see the edges of where the fur sort of comes together. I'm not a hairdresser, so it's going to be interesting to see how this comes out. Because I also want to darken some areas of the fur, like around the eyes, doing some sort of black areas, and going over it probably with a little tea bag and just darkening some bits of fur, because it looks too clean and fluffy and adorable right now, so I kind of want to just dirty it up a little bit, but not too much. So the tea is now dried, and obviously it's gone a little bit lighter, and I've just brushed the fur back through just to get rid of the clumps that happen when you make fur wet and it just wants to stick together. And done the same on the eyes, so the eyes don't look quite so clumpy as well. And the Wampa now has a little nose. So the last thing we've got left to do now is make the wooden backboard as like the trophy mount. So It's not going to be made out of wood, it's going to be made out of foam, and we're just going to make it look like wood. So first thing we got to do is cut out a big chunk of EVA foam. So just cut out the backboard here. It's just a simple 1 centimeter plain EVA foam, and I've just drawn on here where all sort of the wooden grooves are going to be. Now the easiest thing to do with this actually is use a soldering iron to get in all these grooves and make it look like wood, but I don't have a soldering iron, so I'm just going to carefully go into the seams here with the rotary tool, my Dremel. Try not to make too much of a mess and just do a little bit clean up on the edges as well. So it's now been sealed, sealant is dry, so we're going to paint it to make it look like wood. So I'm going to use acrylic paint rather than spray paints, because the only of spray paints that I've got that are like brown colours and metallic, which you don't really want for wood, and it's easier to work it by hand to try and make it look a little bit sort of worn than it is using spray paints. And here is the completed mounted Wampa head. So to put it up on this wall, I've got one of these little removable wall hooks, so I don't want to damage the paint in case I do want to move it. And in the back I've just cut out a little hole where I can poke the hook through and it stays on there fairly sturdy. So thank you very much for watching this build video. Again, something a little bit different, a little bit quirky. And also thank you to my supporters on Patreon. If you want to go support me on Patreon, I've got a bunch of different tiers with a bunch of different rewards. You get little behind the scenes videos, early access to some stuff, and one of the rewards is you get a shout out. So thank you very much to Jeff Kenny for being my first patron to go for the shout out tier. Thank you so much for supporting this channel. Also another tier is you get your name on the screen, so thank you very much to this patron supporter as well. Also, for those heading out to LFCC this weekend, look out for me on the Saturday. I'm going to be there in my holiday special Boba Fett gear because my Marvel costume did not work properly. So look out for a bright blue and yellow Boba Fett. That's going to be me. Please come say hi. I love meeting all you guys. And I will see you in the next video. And as always, may the Force be with you.